digital transformation, data, and so on. And I think there is actually a core element, certainly for financial institution, where you have to, you're regulated by MAS, most of you, and you have to safeguard the data. The customers that we work with are generally EAMs or small companies where they haven't thought about any of this in the past when they started, and they generally go after it afterwards. So part of the MAS guidelines, 8 notices, they are acts, you have to follow them, and you actually could lose your license if you don't. Not scare tactics, but it's the fact. It's the same as everything else they actually issue, anti-money laundering, your KYC, outsourcing, TRM is part of it. And what we've done at Ingenia is we actually created a very basic 9 steps to make you TRM compliant. And it's a lot more complex than that, but we actually looked at it from an entry point. There are 9 things you can actually do to make sure that you are compliant within the guidelines. And the first element is looking at your business process map. And what is it you do? What are the critical areas of your business? And we're certainly talking here about system technology. That goes down into the second bucket. Inventory generally is associated with physical assets. And generally when we see that, there's a missing gap, which is your systems. What systems are you using? As an example, a CRM, it could be from any of the other vendors that are actually talking here today. Part of their systems and software needs to be put into the inventory. And your data, what is it you're capturing? Why are you capturing it? And you assess that data. And then you classify it into what is that data doing? Is it confidential? Does it have an integrity? When does it have to be available? And then how are you going to manage if there is an incident or a problem that occurs? So you can't do one and you can't do the other. And then that takes it down to the risk management. The risk management layer could be actually at the second level or at the same level as the first business process. But we put it down there in number 5 just because it actually simplifies the way you process it. And then once you've done that, you go through the controls. So who has access, your business continuity management, your backups, your disaster recovery, and then the last one is outsourcing. And all I'm going to focus actually on the next 2 minutes before I bust here. 2, 4, 5, and 9, and I'll make it really quick. So what data do I have? So you've done the inventory, you actually need to understand what data you're actually capturing. It could be internal data, it could be your CRM system, it could be data that you're processing for a third party or from another vendor. You need to classify it. So I've just used an example there as a KYC data, right? So who owns it? Compliance. Where is it located? Who's the custodian? In this instance, it's the relationship manager. What is the rating if that data is lost? Right, so we put it down as high. And then you have recovery time and recovery point. So recovery time there says, I've got 4 hours to get the system back online, or that data back online. Right? And then you've got 8 hours to actually get recovery position objective. And the recovery position could be back from your data, backups. Generally, probably backups are happening overnight. So in one day, you could lose almost all of the data where you have to go back to your backup from the night before. And the next element is around mitigating risk, right? So what can go wrong? There's always something that's going to go wrong. We're using technology, and that technology tends to sometimes go awry. So the governance around the risk management, again, we're simplifying it. You identify the risk. What is the risk that actually I'm trying to work with? It's normally around likelihood and impact. You assess the risk, and assessing the risk could be, really, this is not important, it's not value data that I can actually has no significance, and it has a risk of 0. Or it could be high data where you normally have to actually report it. Treat the actual issue, and then keep monitoring. So when we say treat, as in you've got to deal with it, repair it, go back to a repository where you can actually bring it back. And then it keeps going back in a loop. And as you grow and add more data, obviously the complexity gets a lot more than that. Right? So once you've done all of the risk assessment, you've got to put an incident management framework. And again, it's 4 characters: evaluate, classify, and prioritize. So as soon as you have an issue, you've got to evaluate it, you've got to report it, and then you've got to put a priority to it. Is it critical, high, medium, low? And then you escalate it. Generally, we advise clients to actually put a playbook, so you know when something happens exactly what you've got to do. You can't just have a escalation. I'm going to call IT. What if your emails are down? Who are you going to call? You can't just email it. So based on your playbook and your priorities, there is the steps that you've got to take to make sure that you're dealing with it. And then you have to resolve it. So once you, just one more point, going back to escalate, if it's sensitive data or impacts your customers, within the MAS notices and guidelines, you have to report that incident within 1 hour. Once you know, you have to report it within 1 hour. And then once you reported it, you have to go back to MAS and actually give them reason why it happened and what is it you're doing about it within 14 days from that notification. And then you resolve it and monitor, you make sure that you have the right steps to control it. We'll talk about the actual playbook, but you have to write down what the incidents are and how you actually fix them. And then you analyze and address the root cause. So once you've actually fixed it, and then you look at what happened and try and fix that so it doesn't happen again. The last thing I want to talk about, outsourcing, and just use some of the stats in there. There are 63% breaches traced to third-party vendors. So when we talk about outsourcing, we're only talking about third-party providers of software or hardware. That's a huge amount from a third party that provides data to you or services. We spent on average 10 million on third-party breaches over the last 12 months. And these are stats from Solar System and Honeywell. And there's 37% that actually responded to the survey that said that they don't believe that they will be notified if there is a breach from their outsourced vendor. But you can imagine that outsourced vendor has outsourced, so there is an end to the outsourcing, and 72% don't believe that they will be reported on any breaches from the end outsourcing. So what can you do to actually fix it? Limit access, make sure that you have the controls. Who has access to data? Control when they have access to the data. Keep monitoring, make sure that you have the controls in there, and then audits and reviews. Thank you.